Joe Biden there. Let's turn our eye to business. Kate Moody joins us. While the EU and allies are trying to reduce their dependence on Russian energy, others seem to be snapping it up. Who are we talking about?
Well, India in particular, Mark. India has abstained in UN votes to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and it's trying to balance its economic and political interests in the region. In 2021, India imported 12 million barrels of oil from Russia. That was about 2% of its overall supplies that year. It bought none from Russia in January and February of this year, but it has already ordered 6 million barrels for delivery in March and April. That is a significant uptick in pace. The reason, in the months since Russia began its war in Ukraine, other buyers have shied away from Russian oil, and it's being sold at a sharp discount now. Urals crude, which is the main oil blend that's exported by Russia, currently costs around 30% less than the international benchmark of Brent crude. You can see that price difference plunging there over the last month or so. They do normally sell at similar prices. Well, with global oil prices well above $100 per barrel, that is a real discount that Delhi's taking advantage of. India is the third biggest consumer of crude oil in the world, behind the US and China. Analysts also expect Beijing to start buying cheap Russian oil in the months to come. It's understood that India is looking into switching more of its trade with Russia into rubles instead of dollars or euros. For now, the US has said that India's oil imports do not violate its sanctions, although it has suggested that ongoing support for Russia is having a devastating impact. U.S. officials are considering imposing so-called secondary sanctions that would punish third parties who keep doing transactions with Moscow. That would potentially impact India's future oil purchases. Well, meanwhile, the French sports retailer Decathlon has suspended sales at its stores across Russia. Unlike many other Western brands who have cut ties with Moscow since it invaded Ukraine a month ago, Decathlon said this decision was linked to supply chain problems and was not a political stance. Supermarket chain Auchan and DIY retailer Leroy Merlin are also owned by the same parent company. They have also been criticized for not joining that corporate exodus from Russia. Last week, during his address to the French Parliament, Ukraine's president singled out French brands who he accused of financing the war by continuing to do business in Russia. Moscow has said it could nationalize any foreign firms who choose to leave. Let's check in on the day's trading action now. Investors around the world really focused on those talks between Russian and Ukrainian mediators, hoping for progress towards a ceasefire. Wall Street has closed higher. The Dow Jones up about 300 points, nearly 1 percentage point at the close. The tech-heavy Nasdaq outperforming, up 1.8% there. The major European indices closed higher as well, gains of around 3% in each Paris and Frankfurt. When the European markets closed earlier on, we saw gains closer to 1% over there in London. Lawmakers in Ghana have approved a controversial tax on electronic payments. A vote had been expected next week. The government lowered the tax from its initial 1.75 to 1.5% in a move that it claims will raise millions of euros. But many business owners and consumers say their everyday transactions are going to be penalized. Monty Francis has the details.
It was enough to bring lawmakers in Ghana's parliament to blows back in December. A plan to impose a tax on electronic payments known as the e-levy. Now it's a reality. On Tuesday, lawmakers approved a 1.5% tax on mobile payments, bank transfers, and merchant payments. MPs taking the surprise vote when many in the opposition were not present, and after those who were walked out in protest. Vendors say that taxing mobile money, known as MoMo, will force them to return to a strictly cash-based business.
So if the customer comes and then he's coming to pay for additional price of a commodity, and then if he wants to pay through Momo Pay, then after paying that high price, he also pays e-levy. I hope you can imagine how things will be. It doesn't really help to make business comfortable.
The country's finance minister proposed the e-levy in November, saying it would raise the equivalent of 834 million euros this year, helping to lift Ghana out of a deepening economic crisis. Before the vote, he warned of grave consequences if the e-levy did not pass.
That the unyielding stance of the minority in Parliament against the e-levy would gravely affect investor confidence in our capacity to implement our programs and settle our debts.
Despite that, the e-levy is overwhelmingly unpopular. Almost 3/4 of the public is against it, including more than half of voters who support the ruling party.
Mark, it'll be interesting to see just how that particular tax plays out as it begins to be implemented across Ghana.
Indeed. Kate, thank you for bringing that and all the rest of the business to us here live from Paris. We always appreciate your presence and your input. Kate Moody with The Business. Great to see you. Across the studio, Truth